Welcome to Gravelode, and we got more news this week, so let's go through it. And first, we're going to start off with Intel and their new Arc driver. It seems like they've been putting them out here really quick now. We got some more fixed issues overall, and then there is some known issues. I really like when devs put the known issues. It really keeps you understanding if there is an issue out there that they know about and you have a problem with it, at least you're not searching in the web for that. So it's the 32.0.101. It's a beta driver, and this is, another installment there. I really hope, with Intel going through and talking about how we have to have 50% margin, that they stick in the GPU market. That's one of my concerns. Or are these low-end cards that they're going to stick with just really increase in price? That doesn't make too much sense, especially when you're trying to break into a market, right? Sometimes you have to take that loss initially to be able to have that high profit margin product. And if you're trying to get there, Intel, to that high profit margin, stick with it, because I think it'll be worth it. Now, Intel also released a new PresentMon, and the PresentMon, I think, is a really good tool. I've looked at it a little bit. I know if I get to doing more GPU testing, this is one that I'll be using. And with the GPU telemetry feature, no more admin rights. They're really starting to round this out. They really have a lot of features in here. I think it's one of the best tools out there right now for benchmarking overall for GPUs. And I'm glad that Intel continues to go down that route of providing a good product, even though their GPUs are still a work in progress. It's kind of fun to see that they're actually doing this. Now, we're going to switch to one more thing from Intel here, which is Alchemist. The last generation of the first, or I should say last generation, but the first generation of Arc GPUs. Alchemist is now no longer, that's end of life, which makes sense, right? We're long enough in Battle Mage now of the release of the B570 and the B580 that makes sense, and they should have done that here. Just try to clear shelves and move on. Hopefully that they're going to have a B750 or something later on. We'll see. It'd be nice to. I would have liked to have seen that closer to when they first released that B570, B580. Now that AMD and NVIDIA have released their products, it kind of makes it, if Intel can be aggressive, the 50% thing, right? Who knows? But if they can be aggressive at all, it kind of dampers it a little bit now that the releases have been out, because you can kind of wiggle around now that NVIDIA and AMD can wiggle around if they want. I don't think NVIDIA would, but maybe AMD would, to be a little bit more aggressive on their like 9060 XT or last gen products to kind of squash a release of the B750, B770, something like that, which is, that happens, right? And it's hard to go through and be like, Intel release it sooner because, well, it wasn't going to change their mind, which is a sad thing to see. I really wish that Intel was going to go out there and release it sooner, but they didn't. So uh, it is what it is, right? We can't really do too much about it. Now, we're going to jump into AMD. There's a lot of news there. Where do I start? AMD had their AI event, and that's really what we're going to talk a lot about today, is the whole AI side of things. But let's start out with I got my web pages kind of mixed up here, but let's start out with the last generation AM4 chips, because we need more of those. And I do appreciate AMD kind of going through and still releasing another gen and being committed at least enough to think about, hey, you know what? We have some extra chips here. Maybe we can service a market a little bit by, sending a chip here to this market, or, even globally if you have enough. I don't know how many they have, but the Ryzen 5 5500 X3D is going to be a chip now for the AM4 socket. X3D is going to be in the Latin America region, and you get another 6-core chip down there, 105 watts, something where the X3D is very serviceable overall on these devices, and I think and games really well, right? I really like how they game. So this might be another one if you're on a, older, even if you're on like the first gen, second gen, you can upgrade to that 5500X3D, get a little bit more performance out of it, and have your computer last a little bit longer. I think that's a good upgrade overall, and I would like to see that AMD continues to be at least committed to, hey, we got extra silicon here, let's use it to and try to sell it and give it to the consumers, and give them something that they can use. So I really, really like that. Now, saw that there's a report at Video Cards and that MSI has a new BIOS for the 800 series motherboards, and this is two things I really like about it. One, 256 gigs of memory. So if you're looking for a desktop that's dual channel and you're looking for something with a lot of memory, you will be able to do that now with 256 gigs of memory. But you also get future CPU support. So we'll see where this is going, and it's kind of exciting overall to see the amount of expansion we've seen with this, with the memory and future CPU support. AMD's really done well. This will be 3 generations of CPUs, it seems like, because I'm guessing at this point we're closer to Zen 6 for that future CPU support. So I like to see this, right? You'll be able to get 256 gigs in, 128 gigs if you're just sticking to that dual channel across it, and hopefully they keep improving these memory controllers as much as possible, or the support of memory on these boards, so that people that want to use them can. The ASRock little issues aside, but hopefully they got that figured out here. So let's see, the next one is going to be AMD and their insane 1400 watt MI355X AI chip. This thing is liquid cooled. So this is going to be a very, very powerful chip overall. The MI355, which is basic, kind of just overclocked. It's liquid cooled. This, you got 8 terabytes per second memory bandwidth. You got 20 petaflops on that MI355. This is, really kind of crazy. If you're going to go just with the MI350X, that's on air. That's 1,000 watts. So, right, you get an extra 400 watts of if you go to direct liquid cooling. They also have the platform as well. So, kind of competing with NVIDIA a little bit, right, with their platforms as well. So that you get 8 MI350s or 8 MI355Xs. And they're liquid cooler or not, and it's kind of cool to see these AI chips, right? This is still CDNA, and we'll see how they compare to the B200 kind of base stuff, and this is we're getting up there, right? The power now the power requirements are going up, right? But from my understanding is that there's more compute out of that power than you would be otherwise, right? So it's supposed to be, according to AMD, right, it's 30 times energy efficiency improvement, according to the slides that they presented. So this is something, once you get in the real world, you'll be able to tell. But man, that is something else. 300 or 1,400 watts of power in some of these GPUs now. They're really kind of going off. But the CDNA stuff, right, is for their bigger data center stuff. It's a little bit different than RDNA, and we'll see what happens with. Are we doing like CDNA 4 next? Well, the MI400, right, is CDNA 4 or something, or CDNA still, right? That'd be CDNA 5. Yeah, the numbers, I'm getting my numbers all mixed up, right? That'd be CDNA 5, and then you have RDNA and UDNA. When does that all combine, right? CDNA and RDNA will combine at some point for UDNA, which makes sense, right? We got these consumer GPUs, more stuff is probably going to be ran in that. You have the graphics side, right? And that needs to be displayed, but how much other stuff is going to be put on there that either helps with graphics, improve graphics, maybe it's a calculation for, an AI item in the game. As I think about this, the other hardware on the GPU, while you can make the graphics pipeline bigger, and I like to see raw graphics compute power, what else on there can maybe be assistive to maybe make physics better, lighting better, etc., that might not be part of the graphics pipeline that you can add in, and it can then enter in and add those details on top for that graphics pipeline that is in CDNA and that's not in RDNA currently, right? You combine that and all of a sudden, does it really matter? So, Kepler had a lot of this stuff on, he leaked that all the way on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. And so this is kind of fun to see where they're going. But, once they get that lineup out, which I expect to take a little bit of time, but that should be something that is good. We'll continue on that sentiment here. And they're talking about, the MI400 coming out next year. So they're really kind of putting it down here to make sure that they are on the yearly cadence. We did hear NVIDIA being on the yearly cadence, and some of the new CDNA stuff in 2026, I'm sure there'll be an improvement there. And since 2023 was MI300, and then last year was MI325, which is just kind of an upgrade. MI350 really is a lot more changes than just some tweaks to the same 300 series chip. I believe like 325 was really kind of closer just to a slight upgrade. The 350 seems to be a lot more improvements across different accelerators and improvements there, and between the Epyc side and Instinct GPU side, right? There's a lot of improvements there for that whole thing. And then the MI300 series, right? They're going for a lot of improvements. 432 gigs of memory, memory bandwidth. It'll be up to 19.6 terabytes per second, 300 gigs per second of scalable bandwidth per GPU. They're trying to really deliver on stuff. It's going to be interesting to see what they deliver on, right? If they're already saying kind of these numbers, my guess is that they got enough of it done to know that those numbers will be correct. I don't think AMD wants to go through and leave business customers out there with saying, yeah, this isn't even close. That would be ruining their reputation quite a bit. But we'll see about what this all hits. Now, staying with this whole AI stuff, right? We'll continue in. They're going to the annual cadence, right? They have right now a full data center. What do they call it? Polaro 400 or whatever today. And it has MI300 series GPUs, Turing Epyc CPUs, but they released the next 2 years. They announced the next 2 years. It'd be great if you could release a product 2 years in advance, right? So they got the Helios rack next year, which will be Venice, so that'll be Zen 6, right? And that's a MI400 series and stuff. Yeah, that's there. Maybe I called this name wrong. They're having these AI rack solutions, right? Kind of going after the same NVIDIA stuff, which makes sense, right? They're trying to compete on every side of this, and then they're going to have the Epyc Venero MI500 and their AMD Pisano, which is Volcano, and that's 2027. So these racks are coming. They're already starting to talk about Zen 7. So taking from that, right? Let's extract that a little bit, right? Some of this AI stuff, right, really kind of tells you where they're going with their CPU market and stuff like that. 2026 will be a new CPU. 2027, expect another new CPU. And that's, AMD kind of getting into this yearly cadence. I like to see it. If they're going to hit a yearly cadence, as in not 18 months, right? Or basically 23 months, right? Do they release Zen 6 in January, and then the next year in 2027 release Zen 7 in December, right? That's not really a yearly cadence. You're kind of a lot longer than that, which is fine. But you know, they're going to kind of the yearly cadence on the GPU side, so I'm guessing they're going to have something close on the CPU side, depending upon how everything hits. But they're already announcing, so they got to be pretty locked in for these next two, and I'm guessing they're pushing pretty hard for a lot of the AI stuff that people do want, and it seems like people are buying. So how do they hit this? They're going to have the yearly cadence, which means on the desktop side of things, we're probably going to have those chips as well in about that time frame as well, which is pretty exciting. We're going to be able to see, you know, higher core counts. You know, you get the Zen 6, get that improvement, and I like to see it. It seems like maybe what happened here is for the CPU and GPU side, maybe it might not be so much Intel pushing AMD, but it was NVIDIA pushing AMD with these whole systems and, you know, boards that made them kind of say, let's buckle down and do this. I'd like to see an ARM chip from AMD too. That'd be really kind of cool to see the swappability of, or I guess you wouldn't really swap it, but so the interchangeability of, you could either have an x86 one driving your AI, you know, blades and stuff in there in these systems, or you have a ARM chip doing it. And if AMD did it right, that'd be kind of cool. Now, ROCm 7 is in beta right now, I believe, right, for the MI300 GPUs. See some performance across the board. I was listening to what Wendell had to say about it last night. I don't tinker too much about ROCm or even CUDA at this point. You know, I like to get into that, both of them more again. ROCm, just get into it, and then get into CUDA a lot more again, and just, you know, test stuff and build stuff. But I'll get there. Got to get back into having a little bit more time for some other stuff. But the ROCm 7 stuff, listening to Wendell and, you know, reading a little bit about it and listening to what they had to talk about on stage, you know, really their improvement, they're trying to hit, and they're really going after stuff. And been impressed with the short amount of time that AMD has come out and really kind of tried to knock this out of the park to be able to compete with NVIDIA. They're doing a really good job. Impressed to see it here, and hopefully they continue up, because this is one where you'll see more and more that the that being able to compete and having the open platform, I think people are going to be much more attractive to, and being able to, you know, fix things or tinker, especially, you know, if you're not on a certain kernel or, you know, etc. And just being able to get those changes and maybe integrated back in, if people are putting those changes back into ROCm, and, you know, having the reviews and stuff there, could be something where all of a sudden the pressure on NVIDIA to help maybe, I like to see CUDA open. I don't know if that's going to ever be the thing, because NVIDIA is going to hold that tight, but you maybe can break the iron grip that NVIDIA has on this market and kind of open it up. Maybe somebody else will start working with it too. You could say Intel. I thought Intel with one API was going to go down a great route. I used some of the Intel libraries and stuff, and I thought one API would have been a great thing, you know, to go down there. You have one API. The problem is that Intel didn't have all the hardware to just sit there and compete, and that really is a downside. Now, continuing with AMD again, I said there's a lot of news here, right? AMD Epyc, right? CPUs. AMD really wants to show, hey, this is the reason why we are better for, better at compute, better for the reason why you still want us, and why x86 matters. You know, it's for the overall system performance, and they were going against the Intel Xeon chips, which fine. You know, just wanted to mention that Intel's or AMD's right pushing their Epyc chips, which makes sense, right? You're in this. I was reading a report that maybe AMD can, you know, start, especially in the server side, start getting closer to 40–50% here in the next couple of years. And if that's the case, wow, because that means that while you know, Intel was still in the market, right, you have this whole ramp up with servers, and it's just AMD's just going to continue to take off, and Intel's going to have that dive at the same time, which is, well, I guess you'd stay steady, right, at their percentage overall, and just keep going down. I don't think it's a huge drop. I think they're still shipping a lot of chips. It's just, you know, AMD is going to have that huge shot up of a lot more chips sold in a, I believe, an expanding market, right? Kind of what it's showing. So it's good to see. It's interesting to see, but hopefully, you know, I like the market share where companies will start to compete back and forth. Now, AMD did release a new driver, beta driver. So that's just, you know, you want the beta driver. It has some new game support, has some new FSR support on there, fixed some things, has some known issues, but the new driver of 25.6.2 is in beta currently, so we'll see when that comes out. And yep, AMD just continues to add some more FSR stuff to games, and you know, that's got to continue. Got to be aggressive on that, because that seems to be a selling feature to some people. I mean, upscaling stuff makes sense in certain scenarios, right? I'm gonna probably, if I replace my console, right, and I want to play on my TV 4K, I will be trying out that upscaling tech, because if I'm building a system there, right, I'm trying to hit a price point, and I want to see if that price point can then play kind of, I know how my Xbox played, right? I've played on that years now, but how it kind of compares. And so we'll see. We'll see what I do. Want to maybe just start doing that some next month. Get some computer builds here, because I'd like to upgrade mine. I got a Threadripper system. I think upgrading it would be kind of cool to something AM5 like. I could go to Intel, but Intel literally doesn't got anything right now. So we'll see. But yeah, we'll start there. And there wasn't really anything for NVIDIA this week, which, yeah. Unless I missed something, which I could have accidentally closed the tab. I thought there wasn't even a driver or anything that was interesting, but it's a lot of AMD stuff. But let's get into some of the auxiliary stuff, which I think are very interesting. Actually, this would be kind of related to NVIDIA, right? Which is the 3 gigabyte Samsung modules for memory for GDDR7. So think of your desktop's actually being useful if you decided to do oh, I'm making fun of NVIDIA. You get your 50, 60, 12 gig, right? That's what it would be. That would be a smart graphics card for them to have been able to do with the same bus. But, you know, here we are. But at least we're going to have those new 3 gig modules out there. We'll see if they ever get someplace, but, you know, we'll see. So PCI Express 7 spec is released. 8.0 is already in the works, of course, right? So 128 gigatransfers, a raw bit rate, up to 512 gigabytes per second bidirectional X16. And so another improvement, improved power efficiency, and it's backwards compatible, one thing that they usually kind of do. So the 8.0 spec is underway, and we'll see how this, you know, when this makes it there. I think at 5.0 now, where the PCI group was kind of slow. I believe, what was it, 3 to 4 was kind of really slow, if I recall, and then 4 to 5 was a little bit faster. 5 to 6 pretty quick. 6 to 7, and right now a lot of chipsets and stuff on the desktop side are not really pushing that 6, 7 area. I wouldn't be surprised if what happens is that even in some areas, maybe the desktop side, we don't even hit 6, we go right to 7 at some point, because I think that's where we're kind of going for those items here. Now, let's talk about the Switch. The Switch is surprising me in sales. Nintendo America has said that it sold, you know, in the first 4 days, 3.5 million units worldwide. That's impressive, very impressive. I did not think with the price where it was at, it was going to do that. But again, I did think Nintendo was able to garner whatever price it wanted, because it's kind of that console that a lot of people buy. Now, within the first week in the United States, they did 1.1 millions according to Matt Pascal, Nintendo, so from Nintendo Switch and stuff. So That is impressive as well. This is a new record here in the United States for the first week. It looks like this seems like a pretty hot, and the $500 price point does not seem to be holding it back. So let me know if you got a Switch 2, and I'm interested to hear that. But I've been pretty impressed with where the Switch stuff is going. Um, uh, Man, I'm kind of shocked at all the sales, but that's what people are buying, and that's it's a handheld. It's got some improvements. It's going to get more games, and I think that's what people want. So congratulations on Nintendo on getting that Switch. Those $80 games are going to be here, and with the sales of the Switch, and I'm guessing there's going to be quite a few $80 games. This is going to be one thing where a lot of people are going to be like, okay, yeah, this is something that's just going to be normal, and all the other game studios will follow. So Grand Theft Auto 6, this was a good report here. I saw it on WCCF Tech, which is they may allow artists to directly upload their music into the game. That's pretty interesting. I don't know if there's going to be a split for, revenue or something where you have to buy the songs or whatever else, or if you're going to just have radio stations of their own music in hopes that then they go out and buy or listen or someplace else. That's going to be something to watch if they do have this feature, because I'm sure artists will want to get paid at some level. But that would be another interesting addition into some games here to see, and something something I like to see, because it's more user input that you can, or like even back in just artist input that you can put into a game that's a different type of add-on or mod. So interesting to see here. We also have Halo launching on the PlayStation 5, a Halo game, a new Halo game. I This was on Twitter from Grunt.API. Whoa, my bad. And so it's coming to PlayStation. There's no sign on the Switch 2. Can it be Halo 5 and that be also on PC at the same time? Yeah, that's just one of my things. So like to see something like that come. Well, we'll see. Can the whole Master Chief collection go on PlayStation 5? Or do you release them separately? It would be interesting to see, because I think if you did Master Chief, you'd have another great game there that a lot of people would buy there. And so we'll see. Now, the Ubisoft is going through and said they announced a date for Anno 117. This is going to be pretty interesting there to see. I know Linus from Linus Tech Tips. He really likes Anno, talks about it a lot. I really wanted to try it. I've not been in there, but it looks like a fun game just by the trailer. I would be willing to try it, and so maybe I'll have to pick that up and try that out. But they also announced a few other things there too, which is the Rogue Prince of Persia and then Morbid Metal. So games are fun. I like when they release games, but the Ubisoft big event, what do they call it? I can't remember. But that event, was canceled, which fine, a little bit sad, but I like to see when these games, if you don't have anything to release, then why are you gonna put it out? So let's end on a couple things here, which is the next gen HBM architecture is coming out, HBM4 that they're going to do, but they've also detailed everything up to HBM8. Okay. And they keep detailing it, which, this memory has been around for a while. We had the one graphics card with it. What was it? Radeon 7, I think. Vega chips had it too, I think, right? And so really interesting memory on speed and what it is, a huge buff length, right? Used in a lot of the AI stuff, which is, I should have had it with the AMD AI area, but got lost in my tabs again. Got to get these orders better. You're going to hear that for a long time. And so, innovation. and so I like to see that. And then let's end on this. So MediaTek's flagship SoC is supposed to be faster than Apple's, according to this digital chat session coming out there. It's supposed to be faster than the A19 video, or WCCF Tech had this. Impressive, 95, their Dimensity 9500. You know, these chips are getting there. Be interesting to see what NVIDIA and MediaTek are working on for their CPU and GPU combination. Are they using something like this that then can go in these mobile products, have a good gaming laptop? This is something that I was thinking about, that if, granted, if Windows can make it work, which that has a lot to be said right now, you're probably going to, I mean, Linux can make it work, but I have my questions about Windows lately. And if they can get this ironed out and work, you have a great laptop combination there where you see NVIDIA GPU, ARM CPU, and then NVIDIA, or NVIDIA, the NVIDIA dedicated GPU maybe just stays on Intel, or does that kind of go away as ARM chips become more prevalent, or can become more prevalent because they're more capable, software's more ironed out? That would be something that if I was Intel, I'd be kind of worried about. I don't think you have to worry too much on the AMD side right now. AMD comes with an ARM chip or something. They have their GPU side. I'm just thinking that combination where Intel is a little bit lacking right now, especially if AMD keeps up their path of maybe delivering a little bit better for consumers, and also giving the giving good drivers and giving more to the consumers to build up their name brand for a little bit. So with that, I've rambled on long enough. Hopefully you all enjoyed this week's installments of Tony Tech Topics. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to watch one of our videos. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon. That all really does help out the channel. Until next time, God bless.